Let's open with a word of prayer. This is study number 4 of 5 for this camp, and the second of and the last of my presentations. Holy God, we thank you that we can be here with you on this sacred Holy Sabbath day. We ask that we would turn our thoughts, our attention to a study of your word, that we would let our problems, our worries, things that distract us outside of this room. Be with us in Jesus' name. Amen. So, I had a question. I made a comment last presentation regarding the subject of the King of the North. Someone's going to have to remind me what the context was, because I can't remember that. But around 2010 to 2012, am I speaking loud enough? Louder. I don't think I can do louder. Okay. About 13 to 15 years ago, there were studies in the movement. I know we've probably just raised the volume, but I get feedback and I can't hear myself well. Where we understood that in the history of the Second World War, Germany became the King of the North. And if it was 2011, say, that's 7 to 8 years before Elder Tess developed that model. So someone just asked me that question. Did I answer that or not? Yep, we did those studies. Some unknown person. So yesterday, we did a review of the Sunday Law message. And we began a review or revision on the subject of adultery. I referenced the studies from South Africa, particularly study number 11, 12, and 13 of my presentations. So they'll come under two different numbering systems, my numbering and the sequence in the camp itself. And then I spoke about the movement's understanding before ICM. Regarding the waymark of July 18 being the Sunday Law. And it's my understanding that there are at least two proofs that were given for that date. One of them was Quintus, and in our discussion yesterday, we said that the focus of that is the number 5, which for us means July. And the second argument that was given was from the Second World War, which reminds me of why I brought the subject up a few moments ago that I've just said. So it's about the rise of Hitler. We'll say the King of the North. And you can give a version of that history that speaks about, I'll frame it this way, the internal politics of his party. And you can take that history, his rise, the party's failure, and bring that into our own dispensation, our own history, to show a parallel. So those were the two proofs that were given. We spoke yesterday about um, when I asked for proofs, people gave various arguments. I've put them in parentheses here because I don't think they rise to the level of proof. I had some questions afterwards. One of them is July and the 5th month in the history of Rome, how we connect that. And Quintus just means number 5, so how do we know it's the 5th month, not the 5th something else? My understanding is that for number 1, Elder Terry did address those arguments. So if you're still bringing up those questions, then I guess it's, assuming you're not being awkward, it's evidence that the people are still not persuaded by proof number 1 that's on the board. Put your hands up if you don't agree with proof number 1 still. Yesterday people disagreed. And I didn't do a good job of persuading you. Just one? Everyone else thinks it's a good argument? Put your hands up. Good argument is synonymous for proof. 3 people don't agree? 3 people? Okay, so I've got 2 or 3 people who say they don't agree with that proof. Still. Am I representing you correctly? Natalie, Tamina? Yes? So I'm representing you accurately. You don't agree. Sorry? But you spoke just a minute ago. So
Yeah, sorry. I was saying you said some thought it wasn't a good argument, and then and I was kind of like, yeah, and then you changed that word to something else, and I agreed. But I didn't have my hand up. I never had my hand up.
okay. So number two, the rise of Hitler. I've got the gatekeepers there. Can't remember the exact name of his party, but we'll call it the Conservative Party or the Republicans. I didn't put it on the board, but Curtis was at pains to say it was the death of that party. The gatekeepers. Yes. And Arian wants to make the point that they didn't just die, they were killed. Okay, so I'll put that down. If no, I won't put it there. Let's go to today's board. So we've got July 18 and pre-ICM. We have Quintus and we have, I'll just put Hitler, World War II, King of the North. And the key thought is number 5. And the gatekeepers, that's his political party, are killed. Okay, so I'm still not representing that correctly, I guess. So, Curtis, what am I doing wrong?
No, it's not about those
Okay.
two.
Oh,
It's just another layer to Hitler is Julius Caesar.
so I was cautious whether I was going to add that now. I hadn't forgotten.
Oh, okay.
But I thought it would just add insult to injury. Because when I asked yesterday, it took a long while before someone actually gave proof number 2, Charity. But when the proof was given, she struggled to remember details of it. So at the end of the meeting, Curtis was hurt that 40 people didn't remember that he'd been teaching this for a long while. And I won't tell everybody off, but it's a bit of a shame that the only thing you remember is number 5. So that's why I didn't mention about Julius Caesar, because I doubt anybody would have remembered that either. Okay, so I'll put 3 there. So I just got pagan Rome and Julius Caesar and Pompey. '63 BC. And that story is not new. If you remember, someone else spoke about that, which was Elder Terry. So they remember that one. Okay, sorry.
Just for Curtis, to that he can feel better. It was 1 year ago in this room that he speak about Hitler and etc. So we do remember Curtis.
Should we pause and clap? Tamina.
I was going to ask why proof number 2 was not part of the 5 proofs at ICM.
For the same reason that proof number 1 wasn't.
And that reason is?
You're asking the wrong question. That's why.
What is the right
It's,
question?
no, I'll answer my own funny question, my own statement. As a reminder, I'll say incorrectly. We had 5 people saying 5 different things. And the movement are saying collectively, what are we supposed to do? Because we can't work out the correct answer. You, Parminder, are not helping us. And you told us that we, which is you, are not clever enough to work it out anyway. Which is true. So we were stuck. So what we decided to do at ICM was to forget July. July wasn't even spoken about, except at the very end. So during the regular presentations, they were only designed to answer, it's 2 questions, I'm just going to call it 1 question. So I'm going to call it the ICM question, or the question at ICM, which was, and Muriel has spoken about that in her last presentation. Why an election? And that's why I'm saying there was part of that. Why this one? And Charity has added the word cycle correctly, because before that, before ICM, I'm going to say Canada, when I asked a related question, I got funny answers. which basically was the word bookend. And I think that's just, it indicates a lack of understanding. And an answer that was worse than that was what? You don't even have to work from memory. If we're going to cover our sins, what other phrase would we use? Point and period. That's even worse than bookending, in my opinion. Because all it does is just hides your ability to find the right answer. So, that's why we didn't worry about 1 and 2. Does that answer your question? So, before ICM, I'm just going to say we have these 2 proofs. And people were unpersuaded by them to varying degrees. And I think people still don't feel that those proofs are sufficient. So the question I want to ask, which is what we didn't get to yesterday, why are these arguments not sufficient for you? What prevents you from just saying, that's enough? Over to you. Arian.
Because we don't see any hardcore adultery. We don't see any adultery or yep.
Okay, so I understand what you said. I've got that. Anyone else?
Okay.
If you're putting your hand up, don't worry about Arian's answer. My question is, why are there people in this room who don't like these proofs? What's the problem for you? What's your stumbling block? What's the weakness?
Maybe
Before Elder Shemaine speaks, I'm not sure why you're speaking. What I want is people to speak for themselves, not on behalf of others. You, whoever you are, put your hand up and say, I don't like number 1 because, and hopefully your answer is better than it's rubbish. Because if you know Elder Shemaine, she was one of the first people that was heart and soul for number one. So she can't be speaking for herself. She didn't need any other proofs. That was enough. So, to the rest of us, Tamina, what's your objection?
I'm a bit concerned that it might be rubbish. It is close, okay. So I see the interpretation of the name fits. The interpretation of the name fits. But for me, it was weak because it was just a name without a whole structure, a whole story. And it kind of reminded me what back then we did in the time period of FFA. And for me, my alarm bells went a bit on. Not that it's wrong, but it might be not sufficient.
Well, FFA, not the people, but in that dispensation, would you say what they did was wrong or not sufficient?
I guess was wrong.
Okay, because you used them as a reference, and here you said it's not wrong, it's not sufficient. So I'll give you another go.
So I would be forced to say that it's wrong. Proof number one would be wrong.
So is it wrong because it's not 5 and 5 isn't July, which is factual stuff. It's fact. That's just calendar manipulation, facts. So was there a mistake there, or is it bad methodology?
I would go to the second one.
So tell me if I've understood what you're saying. If I read between the lines, because you haven't quite said it. The bad methodology is taking something out of context, just getting that word, number 5, and then just putting it somewhere on our line with no reasonable structure to do that. Is that the problem?
I guess it would be. And I think that was Aaron's problem, right? I guess that was Aaron's issue as well. I guess, yes, that would lead to that, what you said.
So if we gave you several examples to show that it's pretty standard operating procedure to do that, would the switch flip from off to on? So I'm not going to do that, but there are people here who are well capable of doing that. because the discussion came up yesterday after one of the presentations, and they just flew off several examples, I think. Straight out the Bible. So we know they're genuine prophets. So the question is, to push back, if you can show biblical prophets doing this thing, picking and choosing stuff randomly, picking and choosing things randomly, isn't it good that we can do that? Isn't it good for us to do that? So that would be good methodology.
Yes, I agree.
So our problem was those 5 teachers, that they didn't give you enough proof that this was a good method. So that's all you need.
Yes.
Okay? Hitler wasn't enough, or you don't remember it?
No, when Curtis presented it last year, I really liked that study.
Before ICM. So you were persuaded with July.
I had the same questions, why an election? I was sympathizing with July 18, yes. But I also wanted to follow the development and where things lead.
You're waiting for what?
For the speakers to figure it out. Come
Now
up with
you
more
know.
proofs.
For ICM, at least one of them had figured it out to your satisfaction. Terry hadn't, Curtis had. What were you waiting for?
Well, there was still a question about the King of the South death. I was waiting a bit for Aryan to develop his study because I like that one too.
Just repeat the last bit.
I like the study of Aryan as well. And I was waiting also if he would develop to any place.
Like a different place or the same place?
Well, he came to the same place and he said not every question he has is answered. So I acknowledge that.
You got to play fair by the rules. You've received one proof from one speaker that you think is good. I'm not clear what you're waiting for.
Well, maybe I'm not skilled enough and someone else would actually prove the second proof wrong.
So you didn't trust yourself to be able to say, to be able to stand on that proof.
Yes.
So you're waiting for someone else to give you an independent proof so that you can have 2.
Yes.
Maybe not all of us, but some of us know that that's bad. Because you don't have 2 at all, do you? You don't have 2 at all. You have 0. Two bad arguments can't support each other.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Unless you've got something more. Who still doesn't agree? Excluding all the other information that's been given, just with the proofs, why did you struggle with them? What I find funny is that I didn't say I spoke to all 40 of you, but generally, I never got some strong feedback that July is the date, it's the right answer. And yet, when you're questioned publicly like this, nobody's willing to stand up and speak their mind. Either I'm asking the wrong question or you're scared. Or you don't know what I'm asking you. Because according to your testimony, ICM was a waste of time. Because you already knew the answers. And when I say waste of time, I don't mean you didn't have fun doing stuff there. Eating the good food. We appreciate that. I'm talking about waste of time, all the other stuff. What benefit did ICM give to you when you already don't have a problem with the answers or here?
Mm. You mentioned Canada, and there the question was asked if it's salvational. And I'm not sure, but could it be that there was a loss of interest? People don't maybe consider these subjects as important as we used to.
How would ICM change that?
For those who don't care, it won't change anything.
Okay.
But if people don't engage and are actually find interest in that, there cannot be any questions or input or engagement.
Does that mean only you and me are the ones that are interested? The rest of them are not interested? Maybe. Pascal, you can speak French very well. I just don't, I'm not very good. If you take that and start again, sorry.
I'm a bit scared. I'm a bit scared to ask my question because I might seem fool.
Please don't be scared.
So about the second point on Hitler, so we aligned the election of July 18 with the election of Hitler in January in 1933.
Carry on.
We know that in January 1933, Hitler has been elected Chancellor of Germany. So he began to lead Germany, which is not the case in July 2024, when Trump has been elected, because he has been elected to represent the Republican Party. So the question I want to ask, should we only concentrate upon the fact that the parties were situated at this point, and not upon the fact of lead or not to lead?
Is that your question? So, sorry? So that's your question, yes? So I'm gonna rephrase the question in case not everybody understood that. You tell me if I've understood it correctly, and then we'll see if we can answer. So hopefully everybody has some level of understanding. This is proof number 2 of what the model is. You go back to a story that you know is a story about the King of the North. So we know this is a King of the North story, and we know that this is a King of the North story. So you have some reason to go there. Then what you're going to look at, I make it sound simple, but it's not. Because we've shifted from a law to an election, so don't focus on the word election, but think about the rise and fall of kingdoms. And don't get tied up with the word kingdom. It's how people or groups rise to power and how others fall away. So you've got to know all of that. That's number 2. And number 1 was the King of the North. So once you've got those 2 in your mind, we're already living in a history. We know, I can't remember who it was yesterday, that did this one, 10 years. And they said, quoting Elder Tess, basically, that in 2014, there's the purging of the Republican Party. So for our intents and purposes, we're going to call that number 2. The Isaiah 46 concept, if I can say it that way. So don't get bogged down or distracted with that. We know the King of the North. We know that we're looking at how entities rise and fall. And what I've just spoken here about this 10 years is point number 2. We know to look to how, we'll call it kingdoms, rise and how they fall, because that's been a theme for a long time now. And Elder Tess gave us that context. Okay, so far, 2 points. So if that's the case, then when we look back in history, World War II seems to be a good place to investigate. Now, you might call it providence or accident or chance. So you're looking at what's happening at the end of the world. We know America is democracy. We have this idea, various people have said that democracy is under attack or falling. It may or may not be happening, but we have this, there's an atmosphere or a thought that that might be happening. You read you look for a book to read up on the subject, and then what you discover is the book is going to take you back to this history. But maybe that was just, you accidentally stumbled upon this book coincidentally. When you do that, it turns your attention to how Hitler rose to power. You can carry on reading the book or throw it away at that stage, because you've now got enough information from what's happening in the world, what Elder Tess has told you. Think of that 10-year. You already know this is a story about the King of the North. And the book gave you some ideas about how Hitler rose to power that you won't easily see in a documentary. They probably won't focus on that element of German history. So when you do that, you find out that there's a party and there's a person. You see, we have the same now. You see that this unqualified person enters the party changes in some way and hands over power to this person. Once that's done, the person somehow or another takes control of the country. And you see the same in our history. So in 1933, the story of Hitler, when the change of the party that he was a part of happened, and he rose to power, it seems to be, when you look at that history, that he became, we'll call it the president, immediately. But with Trump, when he took control of the party, that was not the event that he took control of the country. That happened either in November or January. So what are we looking at when we compare the two? Because there are subtle differences. Subtle but significant. Have I understood your question? Sorry, yes. So, all good? I'm going to ask Curtis to answer this one. If that's okay? Yeah. So, what are we tracking? And why is it okay not to track everything? What are we tracking in these stories? We're clearly not tracking everything because they're not identical, which means how do you know what to track or look at and what to ignore?
Um, it goes back to what we were discussing about Quintus and the idea of people call it cherry picking. Um, what molds what you cherry pick is the theme that you're going to take from what you're expecting. And what we're talking about consistently now in this story is the King of the North and their ideas. And how they go about spreading their ideas. And so, to be able to spread their ideas, there needs to be an obstacle taken out of the way for them to effectively spread their ideas. So, if in the student's mind, they keep the fact that the story is the King of the North and spreading their ideas as the theme, then how we go about thinking about power needs to be reframed. Is that okay?
So, when you were doing that study months ago, if I tell me if this is wrong, this is 2024 and this is 1933, and this is the takeover of the party. Is that accurate so far? For Curtis?
For all intents and purposes.
Yep. So here we win the election, and here we become president. and I'm just going to put it here, becomes president. Is that reasonably accurate? Where does he become president in 33?
In the context of the question or in literal history?
Literal. Is does it line up?
No, what I mean is because in Germany, the title of president is not chancellor. There's a whole load of details about that. So do you mean chancellor?
Can I call it boss?
Sure.
When does Hitler become the boss of Germany?
1933.
Before this way mark. November.
Yes.
So, when you were doing this study, I'm going to say win the party and win the country. This is Trump. This is Hitler. And in Hitler's story, they happen out of sync. You already knew that. And why doesn't that bother you? Because the stories don't line up properly. Therefore, it appears not to be a valid parallel. How do you turn wrong into right? Because the dates aren't going to join.
What you
The
do
dates of
is
number 2.
you ask yourself, what is the story about? And the story in my mind was, where is the first point where that entity, Hitler or Trump, now has access to power?
So this is where it gets complicated. But Curtis didn't say it this way. He said his story is when you win the party. Not when you win the country.
Mhm.
If you didn't say it,
Yes.
is that accurate?
Yes.
So, so that might not completely satisfy you, Pascal. But can you see the reason why there's a disconnect from from your perspective and Curtis's? Because in your mind, you get the mic, you're looking at winning the country. And they definitely don't connect.
It was actually my question to know upon what we have to concentrate. Either to win the party, because actually when we concentrate ourselves in the winning the country, it doesn't
Line up.
line up. So it's okay for me.
Okay, so I just want to, I know you got your hand up. So has everybody understood what the discussion has been over the last couple of minutes between Pascal and Curtis? What? 1 second. Before I do a bit more, I just want to make sure we all understand what the issues are.
I understand the question, but I'm not sure I understand the answer.
As long as you understand the question, if we're not quite understanding the answer yet, give Curtis and myself a bit of time. But we all understand what the issue is. So, Mark, the reason why I want to focus on this is because this is going to be used now to answer my question. Second. Is it a technical thing? Okay.
Yeah, if you could maybe repeat it shortly, that would be very helpful for me.
Okay. Let me go back. July 18, two proofs are going to be given. One of them is the number 5. And Tamina said her problem was that she's not persuaded that it's good methodology. Got that? So the second one, Pascal spoke. And what she said was that if you go back to the history of Hitler, in simple terms, it doesn't line up properly. It means the history. The history looks very similar. Therefore, it looks compelling. But because it doesn't line up correctly, she's concerned. And therefore, she's saying we should be concerned. Because they don't line up properly. So then I tried to do it as simply as I could to graphically represent where it looks similar, but it's not the same. So that's what's on the board. I'm going to redraw it. We have a line of history. That's 2 lines next to each other. And we're going to go to 2024 and 1933. And you told me this was January. And this is July. I already knew that. So we know what this waymark is. I'm just going to put win the party. The fact that the months are different are irrelevant. It's the same event. So the next things that happens, I'm just going to call it November 2024, November, and I'm going to say win the country. Does that make sense? So what you would hope for is that these 2 waymarks in our history, we'll call them number 1 and number 2, you would expect the original story, the one that you're going to use to prove your history, should have the same structure. You win the party, and then you go to the country and you have an election and win. But it seems to be in that history, 1 and 2 are the same event. And therefore it looks wrong. That's the question, the problem, the concern. Are we all okay with that? Do you answer just on that bit, Curtis, or something else afterwards? Just this bit. So if I've done something wrong, just tell us.
No.
Okay.
Strong points. Just want to give the perspective of why it still works.
I'm going to do that in a second. Give me a minute. So the answer is to try to understand what the story you want to tell. And Curtis is saying, this arrow that I put here, he said his focus is on this. When in the party, not this. When in the country. So that means we have to ask ourselves, what's our story? What's our expectation? What are we looking for? And to me, this answers the question that I asked right up here. Why do you have a problem with July? And very few of you were willing to tell me what your problem was, so I'll tell you what your problem was. In July, what did not happen? Because you got the answer on this line. We can all shout out, you did not win. This has been the movement's problem from the very beginning. I'm not even going to put the last bit. You did not win, which means nothing happened of significance, of meaning, of prophetic significance. So this is why people haven't accepted these proofs. Maybe we didn't understand that, what your problem was. You definitely didn't understand. I'm saying ours because I'm speaking on their behalf, not mine, when I say ours. You certainly didn't understand our perspective, because we're talking about very different things. It's taken all of this time, all of this effort for two people, you and us, in a relationship, to be able to communicate and understand each other. So hopefully now, in a minute, in the coming days, you're going to say, now I know what you've been talking about all this time. Which is why 15 minutes ago, Arian spoke about the topic of adultery. But before giving the answer or the solution, I wanted us to see what the problem was. That Curtis and Pascal are looking at the same story, looking at it in the same way, understand all the dynamics of the story, but there's a disconnect because they're both looking at things from a different perspective. And I think that's why people have struggled with July. Curtis. Curtis.
At the time,
Is it coming up?
hello?
Yeah.
At the time,
Which time?
a year ago, there was a model that I was aware of, which was 538. And I knew because it was movement understanding, it was what we've taught. That 538 lines up with the Sunday law. 538 lines up with the Sunday law. And Daniel's framing of that event is all about an obstacle being killed. And so, in my mind, everything else for Daniel was noise. Nothing particularly, you can't see anything particularly happen with the woman in 538. With relationship to what power you would think. Anyway, so the theme becomes takeaway. And so when I would look at the story of Hitler and I read that story, for Hitler to do anything, the question is what needs to be taken away. That's where my focus was. Gatekeepers.
So, if our attention is about winning the country and Curtis's focus of attention is something different, then you can understand why you're going to come up with different answers. Tamina.
Just a thought I had now is Germany and the US, they look similar. But Germany in that time was a democracy and ended up in a dictatorship. So in January, Hitler wins the election. But in March, he reaches his actual goal to be a dictator. And I'm not sure if we take it for lack of a better word, take that literally for our time. So I'm not sure if we can make a straight line upon line comparison between the two. Because when you look at the steps, the 2 steps, Trump has 2 steps, Hitler has 2 steps. Winning the party and winning the country for Trump. And Hitler is winning the country and then actually becoming a dictator. You don't understand what I mean, right?
I understood the history. I didn't understand the point.
My point is that maybe we can get tripped up, but it's not as straightforward. Germany is a democracy ending in a dictatorship. And I don't think that,
And America is?
as I understand Revelation 17 and what we've been teaching now, it will not reach the point where Hitler was in the Third Reich.
Okay. Any other points? Questions? I know we've run out of time. Pascal, have you understood what Curtis has said? Has that persuaded you? Is everybody persuaded? Well, you shouldn't be. Because Revelation 17 says, what? Where should the focus of your attention be? When you read Revelation 17. 1 or 2? 2. This is why you've got a disconnect. Because everything's telling you you need to look for number 2. Now you've got all these teachers telling you, forget that. Look at number 1. I've put the winning of the party. That's literally, but that's not the correct wording for that waymark. The wording has to be something different. In order to get this to work. So we don't have time to go into the details of this, but I wanted us to see why we were not happy with these proofs. Not because they weren't good, because in our mind, we think we're supposed to be looking about winning. In Revelation 17, your Adventist upbringing. Revelation 17 and your Adventist upbringing used to be a law and then is changed to becoming the government, which means the people who will now rule. And there's no ruling in July. We could argue whether it's November or January, but it's not July. And so these teachers, their job, if the answer is July, is to explain what winning is in July. And in the literal, it's winning the party. That's not the concept that you need to understand. And the way this has been bridged at the moment is with the concept of adultery. Having put that in your minds, you can throw away the subject of adultery and carry on doing this. Because all you need to do is explain what happens in July, then November stroke January. But the subject of adultery or the concept of adultery is helped to bridge this. I'll say it this way, then Curtis can just finish, then we'll close. I put winning the party because that's what everybody saw. And what you should really do, if you're going to do threading, if you know what that term means, is that the waymarks should have the same storyline. So number one shouldn't have the word party there, it should have the word country. Something to do with the country. Or you have to change the word country at number two. You need something that's common between the two waymarks. If you just think about adultery, it does that. Number one, you think. Number two, you act. They're both adultery. Curtis, then we'll close.
This is separate to what we've just said. And I know you said don't speak on behalf of others, but I feel it's important to speak on behalf of others. At least with regards to the quintus bit. So the question was asked, one person says fifth month, and another person says fifth day. One person says Gurgis equal Sunday law. And you say that Gurgis equals maximum vote. So how is that not picking and choosing? In retrospect, looking after the fact. So I guess one question is, what did you mean when you said maximum vote, if you said that? And yeah, how do you answer that question?
Me?
Yeah.
We've run out of time. Next week. Arian?
Can you explain the presentation that you did on adultery? Was that purposely set up to bridge this gap?
I mean, was it pre-engineered?
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure that 90% plus of everything that's ever been taught in this movement was never pre-engineered. You just handle precious truth and not realize the sacredness of what you're doing until afterwards. So I think that's how I would answer that question. Let's pray. Holy God, we thank you that despite all the trials and tribulations in this world, even the stressfulness of the internet, that especially on this day, that where we are gathered together all across the world, that we can have peace. We can have peace that you have led us, that you desire to continue to lead us, if we're willing and if we trust you. Wherever our faith lies today, we know that we're all here, the right place, at the right time. May you build upon that faith. Help us to feel assured not only of your love, but of the fact that we're in the kingdom of heaven and it's not easy to leave. Amen.